On the morning of December 26, 1996, the neighborhood of Boulder, Colorado, was wrapped in a winter blanket. The Ramsey family home stood as a monument to success and festive joy. Inside, the remnants of Christmas celebration lingered. Pine needles, wrapping paper, and the quiet warmth of a family who had everything. The snow crunched under boots as first responders arrived, unaware of the horror that lay within. But as the sun rose over the snowy peaks, the facade of this perfect life was about to shatter, triggering a mystery that would haunt the American consciousness for decades. The silence of that cold morning was not the peace of a holiday slumber. It was the suffocating stillness of a tragedy waiting to be discovered. The nightmare began at 5:52 a.m. when Patsy Ramsey found a bizarre, 3-page ransom note on the back staircase. The letter demanded exactly $118,000 for the safe return of her 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét. Patsy's fingers trembled as she scanned the words, her mind racing to comprehend the demands of the unknown captor. Panic surged through the house like a physical blow. Patsy's frantic 911 call remains one of the most chilling in history, her voice a terror as she pleaded for help. Within minutes, police cruisers lined the curb, but the response was far from sterile. Friends and family moved through the house, inadvertently trampling over evidence, while police failed to seal off the premises, creating a contaminated crime scene from the start. Before the world knew her as a victim, they knew her face. JonBenét Ramsey was a 6-year-old beauty queen in a high-pressure world of sequins and stage lights. And she was the pageant queen, a symbol of poise. To many, she represented lost innocence, caught in a jarring contrast between childhood purity and the artificial world of adult beauty competition. Her image, captured in photographs wearing tiaras and gowns, would soon become the focus of a global obsession. Behind the glitter, she was simply a little girl who'd gone to sleep on Christmas night, never suspecting she would not wake to see the new year. As the morning dragged into the afternoon with no word from kidnappers, the tension became unbearable. Just after 1 p.m., a detective suggested John Ramsey and a friend search the house. They descended into the basement, a space of storage rooms and dark corners. The air in the basement felt heavy and stagnant, alien-laden with the smell of old dust and the unspoken dread that had permeated the house since dawn. In the wine cellar, a small room, John made a discovery that would change his life. There, lying on the cold floor, was JonBenét. She was covered by a white blanket, her hands tied and duct tape across her mouth. John carried his daughter's lifeless body upstairs, his cries of agony echoing through the halls, unknowingly further compromising the forensic integrity of the scene. The discovery shifted the investigation from a kidnapping to a homicide. The immediate shock was replaced by a growing sense of unease. Police, frustrated by the lack of forced entry and the strange location of the body, began to look inward. The loving parent's narrative started to clash with the reality of the crime scene. Before we continue, you subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. How could an intruder enter a locked home, write a long note, and commit such a brutal act while the family slept just floors away? Suspicion deepened as investigators realized the ransom note had been written on a legal pad found inside the Ramsey kitchen. Even more jarring was the specific ransom amount requested. The $118,000 demand was the exact figure of John Ramsey's annual work bonus. This wasn't a random crime. It was a clinical, intimate violation. It suggested that whoever was in the house that night knew the family's deepest secrets, turning the investigation toward a terrifying possibility. The shadow in the house was someone who truly belonged there. The transition from private tragedy to public spectacle happened overnight. Yet as Boulder police struggled to find immediate answers, the media filled the void, broadcasting loops of JonBenét in her pageant costumes, heavy makeup and a smile far too practiced for a child. These images ignited a firestorm of judgment. The Boulder community was divided, torn between sympathy and suspicion. The public turned on Jon and Patsy Ramsey. People questioned why the parents hadn't heard a scream, or why they used lawyers instead of cooperating fully. The sexualized pageant world became a central theme in the court of public opinion, leading many to believe the parents were hiding a dark dynamic. This wasn't just a murder, it was a nationwide obsession, where every silence was analyzed for guilt. Beneath the media circus, the forensic evidence presented a contradictory picture. The autopsy revealed harrowing injuries, where JonBenét suffered blunt force trauma to her skull and was strangled with an elaborate, handmade ligature. This garrote was constructed from cord and a broken paintbrush handle from Patsy's art supplies. Why would a killer use two distinct, lethal methods? Adding to the mystery was undigested pineapple in her stomach. Tests suggested she ate it shortly before death, yet the Ramseys insisted they hadn't given her any. A bowl of pineapple sat on the kitchen table, bearing the fingerprints of her brother Burke. The mystery of the pineapple remains one of the most debated aspects of the crime scene. Amidst the growing suspicion toward the family, investigator Lou Smith arrived. Unlike police convinced of the parents' involvement, Smith looked for evidence of an outsider. He cataloged overlooked details, and pointing to a broken basement window and a footprint in the dust that didn't match the family's shoes. Smith also identified small marks on JonBenét's body he believed were caused by a stun gun used to incapacitate the girl. Smith argued that the lethal blow and the ligature were the work of a sadist who came specifically for JonBenét. Most importantly, he focused on unidentified male DNA found on her underwear and under her fingernails. For Smith, these weren't just details. They were chilling proof that a shadow had entered the home, a predator who waited in the darkness to strike. The toll on Jon and Patsy was visible. They lived under a state of siege, their every move tracked by paparazzi. Suspicion cast a heavy shadow over Burke Ramsey, who was only 9 at the time, and the media suggested a childhood accident had turned fatal and that the parents staged the scene to protect him. They shielded Burke from the public eye, a move police interpreted as a cover-up. Patsy, already battling health issues, withered under the glare of the cameras. In 1999, tension peaked during the grand jury. For months, jurors reviewed evidence in secret. The public expected an arrest to close the chapter. Behind closed doors, the jury voted to indict Jon and Patsy on charges of child abuse resulting in death. However, the district attorney refused to sign the indictment, arguing the evidence was too circumstantial. He believed unidentified DNA created reasonable doubt. The indictment was buried, kept secret for over a decade, leaving the investigation in a state of suspended animation, while the parents remained targets of public scorn. Today, this deadlock created a permanent scar. While police focused on the family, biology told a different story. Despite pressure to find a motive within the home, the DNA found on the victim did not match John, Patsy, or Burke. The DNA found on the victim's intimate clothing did not match any member of the household. This truth stood against the tidal wave of opinion, suggesting that while the family was trapped in a nightmare of suspicion, the real killer was still out there, hiding in plain sight, protected by the very chaos that had derailed the search for justice still. Boulder became a tomb for the Ramseys, seeking a life away from the flashbulbs and the judgment of a world that had already convicted them. Worse, the family retreated to Georgia. They traded snowy peaks for the humid South, but suspicion followed them like a persistent ghost. For Patsy Ramsey, the battle was not just against public opinion, but against her own body. The ovarian cancer she had fought before JonBenét was born returned with a vengeance. As the years passed, her health declined under the stress of mourning a murdered child while being accused of her death. In June 2006, Patsy died at 49, her name still tarnished. She left this world never having seen justice, nor a formal declaration of her innocence from the city that had pursued her. Months after Patsy was laid to rest, the world's attention was jolted by a headline from Bangkok, Thailand. A man named John Mark Carr was arrested. A former teacher with an obsession with the case, Carr claimed he was present when JonBenét died. He spoke in chilling tones about his love for the little girl and the accident that took her life. For a brief moment, the media believed the mystery was solved. The Ramsey family's name seemed on the verge of total clearing. However, the excitement was short-lived. Forensic testing proved that Carr's DNA did not match the profile found on the victim's clothing. His confession was a hollow distraction in an already labyrinthine investigation. The true turning point arrived in 2008, nearly 12 years after the crime. District Attorney Mary Lacey decided to utilize a new forensic frontier, touch DNA. This technology could identify genetic material from just a few skin cells. When the tests were run on the waistband of JonBenét's leggings, when they revealed the same unknown male profile that Lou Smith had faithfully championed for years. This profile belonged to no one in the Ramsey family and no one in the national database. Armed with this scientific certainty, Mary Lacey issued a formal letter to John Ramsey in 2008, exonerating him, his late wife, and his son Burke. She offered a public apology for the years of suspicion that had clouded their reputations, finally admitting that the DNA evidence pointed to an outside intruder. Yet an apology cannot bring back a daughter or erase a decade of national vilification. The JonBenét Ramsey case had transformed the American legal landscape, a grim blueprint for the trial by media. It proved how easily a narrative could outrun the truth, and how a botched initial investigation could paralyze justice for decades. John Ramsey, now the sole surviving parent, became a figure of quiet, persistent grief. He watched as his son, Burke, attempted to reclaim a private life despite cruel theories. John continued to speak out, not for his own reputation, but to ensure his daughter's name remained in the public consciousness. He became an advocate for DNA database expansion, hoping that the technology that cleared his name would eventually name her killer. Today, the image of the 6-year-old girl in the sash and crown remains a haunting fixture of American culture. The house in Boulder has seen new owners, and the wine cellar where she was found has been remodeled, but the silence of that Christmas night still resonates. The case remains one of the most significant failures of modern law enforcement, a reminder of what happens when theory replaces evidence. However, hope is not entirely lost in the face of modern technology. As we move toward the 30th anniversary of the crime, investigators are looking toward genetic genealogy that caught the Golden State Killer. The shadow in the house might still have a name, hidden in a distant relative's DNA. Until that name is spoken, JonBenét remains a haunting symbol of stolen potential, waiting for the truth to finally set her memory free. The killer may still be walking among us, but the light of science is slowly closing in on the lingering darkness.